Welcome to latest News Blaster. In a scene that felt ripped from a prime-time drama more than a sports studio, veteran sports commentator Stephen R. Smith, long known for his thunderous takes, boisterous energy, and signature baritone, was seen leaving the building in visible distress after news broke that his former colleague Molly Quinn had filed a $1.3 million lawsuit against him and their parent network. The complaint, filed in civil court early Tuesday morning, alleges a pattern of workplace harassment, emotional distress, and reputational harm that Quinn's legal team says left her no choice but to seek accountability and damages, and the story immediately detonated across social platforms, talk radio, and sports podcasts as fans, critics, and colleagues scrambled to process what many described as an unprecedented shakeup inside one of the country's most watched sports media empires. Colleagues who have worked with Stephen for decades were stunned, some saying they had never seen him so shaken, while others cautioned that the real person behind the television persona is often more complicated and fragile than viewers realize, and behind the headlines there's a messy human story of conflict, power, and the pressures of life in the spotlight. The lawsuit, which Quinn's attorneys describe as a necessary step to restore dignity and professional respect, lays out a timeline of interactions, some public, many private, that the complaint alleges created a hostile work environment and caused Quinn significant emotional and financial harm. Legal documents included detailed accounts of incidents, contemporaneous emails, and witness statements from other staffers. And while the complaint seeks $1.3 million in compensatory damages, legal analysts watching the filing say the suit also aims to send a message that even high-profile, charismatic on-air personalities can be held accountable for conduct off-camera, and that networks must do more to protect employees regardless of stature. For Stephen, the last 48 hours have been a blur. Sources close to him say he canceled appearances, retreated from social media, and spent long hours with his legal team trying to navigate the immediate fallout. On the set, where he usually commands the room with swagger, crew members whispered that he'd simply been gone, not in the way of skipping work, but present in body with a person fractured by shock. Video that surfaced online showed Stephen exiting a building flanked by aides, his face a mixture of fury, exhaustion, and fear. He was reportedly seen pausing by his car, placing his hands over his face, and taking several deep, trembling breaths before climbing in. A moment many described as the image of a man who suddenly realized that fame and invulnerability are fragile illusions. The network, forced into crisis mode, issued a terse statement acknowledging the lawsuit and announcing an internal review. The statement expressed regret for the distress caused and promised a thorough investigation, while also emphasizing that it takes allegations seriously and will cooperate with any legal process. Language that legal experts say is meant to avoid prejudicing the case while calming advertisers, investors, and viewers who suddenly questioned the stability of the network's marquee programming. Internally, executives convened emergency meetings to coordinate messaging, assess contractual exposure, and determine whether to remove Stephen from upcoming broadcasts. Some in the corridors urged caution, pointing out that rushing to fire a top-rated host could trigger contract disputes and further legal complications, while others argued that the network's reputation and duty to employees required decisive action. The tension between brand protection, legal liability, and ratings calculus has rarely felt so public. Molly Quinn, a co-host and rising star in her own right, released a short, composed public statement through her attorneys that struck a measured tone. She said her decision to file suit was not about money, but accountability, and that she hoped the legal process would bring clarity and necessary change for colleagues who deserve a safe workplace. That statement, though brief, resonated with many viewers who have watched Quinn's steady career growth and admired her on-air professionalism. Social media swiftly amplified her message, with supporters praising her courage and critics of the network demanding transparency. Yet the reaction was far from unanimous. Stephen's fans, a passionate cohort who defend his candid style and see him as brutally honest and entertaining, rallied quickly on social platforms, accusing the media and the public of rushing to judgment and insisting on due process. Hashtags both supporting Stephen and backing Quinn trended within hours, creating a polarized online ecosystem where every clip, tweet, and statement was parsed for sympathy or scandal. Veteran media analysts pointed out that this polarization is familiar in controversies around public figures, but warned that the stakes here are different. Employment and harassment laws, contractual obligations, and corporate responsibilities are legal terrains where public opinion matters, but does not determine outcomes. In newsrooms and barbershops alike, the debate turned existential. What does accountability look like when the accused is a ratings magnet? Should networks prioritize moral rectitude even if it costs viewership and revenue? And how do you navigate the messy middle when both the accuser and the accused are beloved by different segments of the audience? The case also reopened conversations about workplace culture within high-pressure, male-dominated corners of sports media. Numerous current and former employees, speaking on condition of anonymity, told reporters that the sector's culture long tolerated abrasive behavior in the name of entertainment, and that boundaries between personal and professional were often blurred by long hours, travel, and backstage access, conditions that can breed misconduct if unchecked. In recent years, several networks had implemented training and stricter policies, but critics argued that enforcement was uneven and that star talent often enjoyed de facto immunity. For Quinn's attorneys, the suit's filing was calculated, backed by what they described as contemporaneous documentation and multiple witnesses. The complaint was structured to survive dismissal and to place pressure on both Stephen and the network to consider settlement, a common strategy when plaintiffs want accountability, without the delays and uncertainties of a full trial. Legal observers noted that a $1.3 million figure, while headline-grabbing, is not necessarily a binding cap. Settlements, if they happen, often reflect confidentiality deals, non-monetary terms, or reinstatement conditions. Nevertheless, the sum sent shockwaves through the industry and prompted advertisers to ask pointed questions about brand safety, a major concern for those paying top dollar to place ads around programming that features controversial hosts. Amid the legal maneuvering, human stories emerged. Colleagues described Stephen as someone whose charisma can be magnetic, who can pivot from playful banter to searing critique in mid-sentence. Off-air, they said, he could be generous and mentoring to young talent, but also prone to impulsive remarks and a refusal to back down when challenged. Traits that made him a ratings phenomenon but, according to the complaint, sometimes created toxic conflicts. Molly, they said, is meticulous and disciplined, a professional who built her credibility through preparation and calm, and who had navigated industry pressures with poise. For many, the image of these two professionals, clashing at the center of such a maelstrom, was both tragic and a signal of deeper problems in a culture that rewards loud voices at the expense of quieter ones. As the lawsuit gained traction, pundits and cultural commentators weighed in with a range of takes. Some framed the story as a #MeToo-era reckoning finally reaching sports media. Others warned against an assumption that all allegations are true, pointing to the necessity of a fair legal process. Columnists wrote searing op-eds interrogating the system that elevates talent into a separate class, one which sometimes resists accountability. At the same time, a wave of think pieces explored the psychological toll of on-air life, the loneliness of fame, and the thin line between theatrical performance and personal behavior. Ratings analysts noted an immediate, if temporary, uptick in viewership for the network's programming as audiences tuned in to witness how the story would unfold, an ironic twist that highlighted the perverse incentives media ecosystems sometimes create, where controversy fuels attention and